So time marches on and we're into week 5 already. So we're going to do a little bit more with paging. We want to give the ability for the user to select what page size they have, and we'll introduce cookies with that. And then we're going to see how cookies going to help us with this ultimate goal, saving index parameters, right? So when you go back, to the index, it retains the same sort, filter, and page that you left, right? Then we're going to get into a couple of interesting topics. Audit, having audit fields so we can audit who changed records and when and so on. And then finally, we'll get into optimistic concurrency, something that was hinted at right from the very beginning, but that we haven't got in place yet, to be able to make sure that two people aren't changing the same record at the same time and not being aware that the other one has modified the record since the person had brought it up on their screen to make their changes, right? Okay, and we can start part 2, project part 2. The instructions have just been posted for that as well. But let me just get into the actual application here again. So this is where we left off. We've added our nice paging control. We can page through our records. Same, we saw how easy it was. Even though we don't have filtering or sorting, we can just quickly add paging to our doctors as well. But here, we're looking at, well, what if I don't want 5 as my page size? Or maybe I like that for doctors, but not for patients and things like that, right? Another small issue I'm going to mention as well is look at that 35 pages here. So, of course, that would change if I change my page size, once I have the ability to allow the user to do that dynamically while they're running the application. But, just think here, say you want, get somewhere around page 31. Well, it takes a lot of clicking to get there. So we're also going to add the ability to jump a certain number of pages, and we'll change that value depending on how many pages there are and things like that. Okay. All right. So let's get into our basic approach then. So I'm going to stop running. We're going to use cookies, right? Remember, I mentioned that cookies, they have a bit of a bad rap. Okay. Cookies are really not the devil. These are basically what we would call functional cookies that we're about to add. And, when you're creating an application for a client, the whole business of giving permission is really moot because it's for internal use only within the company anyway. But we're going to start off by adding a little utility here. Okay, we have our 2 so far, the SQLite one, the paginated list we add. So let's add another utility here. I'm just going to call it my cookie helper class. Okay. It's going to be another static class to help us manage our cookies, right? Again, I didn't write this. It's right from the Microsoft tutorial. Okay, set the cookie. So we pass in the HTTP context. We need a key value pair. Cookies are just a collection of key value pairs, essentially, but there also is an optional expire time along with that, right? So we new up a cookie options object, okay? And then if we have an expire time, then we're going to add that number of minutes, okay, in the future. So that's the unit of time that we're talking about here using this particular cookie helper version, right? If there isn't one, we're going to add extremely small expire time, okay, 10 milliseconds. So basically, it's so short-lived that it virtually does not keep on living beyond its one use, right? Okay, and then we append that to the cookies collection of our response. So cookies are maintained by the browser automatically for us. And that's all we really have to do. We have that ready to go. Okay, so we have our helper in place. Now we're going to need another helper, right? So far, our paginated list just manages the paging of the data, but we want to now enable the user to change that. So we're going to make another static utility here in order to help the user in their choices, right? So I'm going to call it a page size helper. And what are we going to have going on here? Well, it's a bit of code to it, not a huge amount, but a little bit here, and we'll kind of walk through it together. Okay, so one of the things this is a private static read only because I don't expose it directly, we expose it as a select list, right? So, but here I'm defining what items I want when the user goes in to modify the number of records per page. I'm going to give them a drop-down list to choose from. Sure, we could let them type in any number they wanted, but I think that this is a good approach, and you could change it if you really wanted to. So I'm going to present them, 3, 5, 10, 20, up to 50, and then I'm going to jump to 100 and 500. So, again, in consultation with your client, right? Because they're your ultimate person that you want to make happy. They might want different values or a different approach, but you can modify it quite easily then as you go. So I'm going to use this string array here as I build a select list. So this is public, right? Public static select list. And then we're going to use that in our UI. Actually, it'll be in a modal pop-up. So the user can say, hey, I want to change my page size to one of these options from the drop-down list, right? Okay. Then I have here my set page size static method, okay? And basically, it gets the page size coming from, it'll look in multiple places. Is it from that select control that we just presented to the users? Will they choose one of the items from that select, right? If not, okay, we're going to set the default to 5 if they've never set a preference, okay? Otherwise, the first time they select a page size on any view, that becomes the new default for all controllers, right? And then if they set a preferred page size on any view after that, it's remembered for the individual controller. So first time you choose a page size, then it becomes the default for everybody. But then as each one you choose a size, it is remembered for that individual controller going on. What do we need for parameters? The HTTP context, the page size ID value from the request, okay, and that would come from our drop-down list. This is going to be the identifier for the actual drop-down list control. Okay, and of course we also want to be able to work with individual controllers, so we'll set it up so we can have the controller name as well. All right, so here's the logic involved. So I start off just setting my page size to 0, okay, and then I check this comes from my drop-down list. So if that has a value, then that's what we're going to go by, right? Value selected from the drop-down list, so we'll use and save it to the cookie, okay? So getting that page size ID, I'll put that here as page size, right? And then I'll go to my cookie helper, set a cookie for this particular controller, okay, and the page size value. And then we actually store the page size. And I'm giving it a 460 minutes, reasonable long length of time to remember this value, right? Okay. Now, it'll also be set as a default value, okay, for any custom page size, right, for any controller, right? So I'm storing another cookie, a default page size value of the same size, right? Okay, else, not selected, so see if it's in the cookie, okay? We're asking to find out a page size to use, so we didn't just set it with the drop-down list, so let's see if there's one in the cookie. So we go to our request.cookies. For this specific one, remember, we use the controller name and page size value, okay? And we get it from there, and that will be our page size. All right. So if after that the page size is still my initial value of 0, then clearly it wasn't selected from the drop-down. It didn't exist in the cookie. So now I'll go and check for default page size value, right? So if it hasn't been set any other way, maybe it's here, right? And I'll grab it that way. Failing that, then I'm going to go with zip 5, right? I'm just going to use 5 as the page size because there's been no effort to change it anywhere whatsoever. And that's the logic in this helper. All right, so we're going to come back to the shared views folder now. Okay, here's where we've been working. Remember, we added our paging nav bar here. So we're going to add a modal, okay, so that when we want to, we can bring up this little modal dialog box, right? And that's something that I mentioned back in Brightspace. I put the link there to the Bootstrap documentation on using a modal, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to create a partial view here called page size modal. It'll be our pop-up that we're going to use to present the choice to the user of setting the page size. So I'll just add a class in here. Oh, no, sorry, I'm adding a view. Okay, a razor view. Name will be _ page size modal. It's empty, create as partial view. Good, click add. And as soon as it's ready to go, I've got my code ready to put in place. Okay. All right, so I'll just replace this with my code. So again, look at the documentation, but basically class modal, I've set it to fade. I have given an ID here, and basically there is a header, there's a body, and optionally there could be a footer, but I'm not using one, right? So in the header of our model content then, I have the words set page size in a nice big H4, and then this is how I get a close button in the upper right corner, okay? Notice that it already has this predefined data dismiss for the modal, okay? And then that way you can click that as one way to close the modal without making any changes. Then inside the body, we have a little form row, form group, input group. Basically, here is my label, my span page size, and right beside it then will be my HTML drop-down list, okay, for what? For page size ID. Remember, that's my the name I gave to the select list, okay? And yeah, basically that's it. So then I have my submit button, okay, and notice it's all put together as an input group, okay? So it's a prepend, the label, then the control, and then the append comes afterwards. So it looks like it's all one unit, okay, using this input group, right? So we have our submit button at the end for set page size. And that will be our modal. All right, good. Now, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to come back to our paging navbar. We can do a few things in here to improve upon it. One of the first things I'm going to do, when we talked about partial views, we mentioned that views can contain partial views and partial views can contain other partial views. So look at this, partial, page size modal. So it's going to be bundled right in, so to speak, with the actual paging navbar, right? So any page that has the paging navbar will also have the page size modal partial view available as well. Okay. Now we're going to follow the same type of thing here. We're going to have our page navigation, right? But I'm going to just replace the rest of the code so I don't get mixed up myself here. Because what we're doing is we're adding a bit more additional options, okay, to our paging navbar, right? For one thing, we check if total pages is 0, then we don't want to have any buttons even showing up. Why have a forward and back buttons all grayed out, okay? Basically, we'll just have a one button in the center. Basically, it says no data to show, right? And that's all there is to it. Now, you know, there's really not much more to say about that. But for a consistent look, we'll have that in place. Now, if total pages is 1, again, we'll just have the single button, okay? But it'll say page index of total pages, so it'll say page 1 of 1, and that's perfectly fine. But notice it's also clickable, so that it will bring up our modal, right? Both of them, in both these cases, we can bring up the modal to change page size. Okay, so we have more than one page, so down here we come. Now here's where I mentioned before, you know, stepping through one at a time, if you have a very, very large number of pages, right? You know, it might be a lot more than in the 30s, could have hundreds of pages possibly, right? Depending on how much data you have and page size you've set and so on and so forth. So what I thought I'd do here is I'm defining a jump amount, okay? I'm going to add an extra button going either forward or backward where you can jump a certain number of pages. So this is very customizable. You can change it as per your client's requirements. But basically the logic I thought I'd start off with is if there's more than 25 pages, then I want to offer to jump 10 at a time, okay? If it's less than 25, then we'll offer to jump 5 at a time. And then again, we have our previous and next disabled, right? Depending if there's any further to go or back, okay? And then I'm defining based on my jump amount, how much we could step back or step forward, right? So that's all this little bit of mathematics is doing there, is figuring out, okay, how much we're actually going to step forward and back. Bearing in mind, of course, if we're getting near the end or near the beginning, okay, our jump amount might be too much, and we have to shave a little bit off because we don't want to try to jump beyond the end or back in front of the very beginning. So that's what we're doing here for our step back and step forward. Then I have my basic layout here, my unordered list. Each list item is a button, okay? One to go back to the first. But then here is my step back button or jump back button, right? I'm going to jump back X number of pages based on my step back amount, okay? Okay, then there's the one that basically goes to 1 at a time, 1 previous. And then this one sits in the middle, right? Page index of total pages. And it has as well the modal pop-up. So if we click the button itself, it brings up our modal, allowing us to get our page size modal up on the screen, allowing the user to change how many page records they want per page. Next, forward 1, forward our jump amount, okay, based on our current step forward amount, and then finally jump to the very end, right? Go to the total pages, the count, and that will be the page that we're on. Okay, if the logic of it seems a little weird, don't worry. Once you see it up and running, you'll understand what we're doing with this jump amount a little bit more clearly. Okay. All right. So just a note there that we are using tooltips, so you might want to make sure you have that little bit of JavaScript we added once before to give some styling to the tooltips. They work without this. They work fine, but it looks a little bit nicer if we add that as well. So let me just X out of these so far. Okay, now to finally implement this, we do need an additional parameter. So let's come back, okay, to the patient controller. We'll go back to the patient index in a minute. But in the patient controller, we need yet another parameter for that page size ID, right? So I'm going to put it right here after page size ID. Then the only other change we have to do here really, remember we hard-coded right down here at the bottom, page size 5, right? That was hard-coded in here. So I'm going to take that out, and instead we'll do it this way. I'm going to my page size helper, set page size, okay? And if I have a value come from my drop-down list, okay, then it will be in page size ID, and we'll pass that. And of course, if there isn't anything in here, right, then it's going to do its own logic, checking the cookies and deciding what the best page size is. And that I will grab here, and then I will use the page size helper to, oh, sorry, this is just for the view data. Sorry. That sets the page size. This is just to make sure I have the select list available, right, to the pop-up modal for the page size ID. Okay. So this would actually work, but remember we talked about remembering for each controller? When we defined our set page size, okay, we pass in the context, the page size ID, and then optionally we can pass a controller name, right? So I could hard code in here, I'm in the patient controller, so I could put in quotes, patient, right, the name of the controller. And that way I would actually be saving these values specifically for the patient controller. But as I say in my copy-paste file here, hold the presses, okay? Then that's one more bit of information I have to customize, right? So if I go to, say, the doctor's controller or any other controller, I only have the two so far, right? I'd have to remember, oh, I've got to come in. I can't just copy and paste this code. I have to come in and customize it, make sure I put the name of the controller there, right, as well. So wouldn't it be nice if the controllers could be self-aware, right, to know their own name inside the code? Sure it would. And in fact, as time goes on during the term, we're going to find this functionality is useful in more and more different situations, not just right here. But to help make our controllers self-aware, we're going to do a start down that path by adding a special ability to certain controllers, right? Right? If you go right to the top here, remember that the controller itself, my patient controller, inherits from the controller class provided by the ASP.NET MVC project, right? Okay, so that's predefined for us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest, let's make some custom controllers as well. So I'm going to right to the top, right click, we're going to add a new folder just to keep it organized. I'm going to call this folder custom controllers. Oh, that's okay. It's not too late. I can rename it now. Okay, custom controllers. Inside here, I'm going to add a class, right? And it's going to be called cognizant controller. Cognizant because it is self-aware, right? I'm going to make this class here, cognizant controller, and it's going to inherit from controller. Okay? Now, I might as well just put my code in place here. So I have my summary comments as well. Okay? Makes the controller self-aware, knowing its own name and what action was called, right? So basically how this works, okay? The controller always has access to the route data, the values that were used to get to it, right? So we can go in there and look for the controller, and we can toString it, otherwise returning an empty string, right? Same thing with the action that was clicked. So if we've come to, say, the doctor edit action, right? Then we'll be able to know that it's the doctor controller, the action is edit, okay? So it's very helpful that the controller knows these two things. So I'm exposing them internally here as strings, controller name and action name. Now that I have that, coming back to the patient controller, what I'm going to do is I'm going to inherit from cognizant controller, right? As opposed to just straight controller. But don't worry, I'm not losing anything because how inheritance works. Since cognizant controller inherits from controller, when patient controller here inherits from cognizant controller, right, it gets all the goodies coming from being a controller, but at the same time, it now has access to those two internal strings, controller name, etc., right? So finally, now I'm ready to come back down here to the end of the index action, where I call my page size helper. Instead of hard coding the name, I can just put in controller name, right? Excellent. So you see, the other advantage is I can just copy this code, bring it over to my doctor controller, down here at the end of index, where I put this hard-coded value of 5 in, I can just paste, right? Oh, I don't have my page size ID, okay? No big deal, right? I can add that parameter just like we did here. One too many commas there. But also for the controller name, well, I have to inherit from cognizant controller. Did I spell that right? No, of course not. Now that it inherits from cognizant controller, okay, it knows the controller name, and it's ready to store a cookie specifically for the doctor controller, right? And then that will maintain the page size for it. Okay. So as simple as that, right? So that's making it less and less reliant on remembering, oh, I've got to change this, I've got to change that, okay, because it will always know the name of the actual controller. Okay, let's give her a try, see how it's working. Okay, so we are up and running. So if I come to patients now, right, notice we have my new jump buttons, jump forward 10, right? Of course, that's disabled. Okay, next, next, next. But I can come here, right, click to change page size. So if I want to change it from page size 5, I can go to 10, set the page size here, and then away we go. And of course, now jump forward 5 pages at a time, right? Because I have less than 25 pages, okay? So the jump amount has been set to 5 pages at a time. If I come back in again, change this down to something like 3, look at that, 58 pages. So not surprisingly, my jump forward is 10 at a time, jump back is 10 at a time, and away we go, because of the number of pages we have, right? So let me go back to 10. Okay, good. Now let's come to doctors. Ooh, look at that. It inherited the previously set preference for 10, right? But don't worry, I can change that. Say on doctors, I can say, no, on doctors, I wanted just 5 records per page, 5 at a time, and away I go, right? Go back to the first, to the last. My jump amount, forward 5. Oh, I don't have my little JavaScript for my tooltip there. It still works, right? I still have my tooltip. It's just not styled quite the same way. Okay, but that's fully functional, right? I'm just going to add that little bit of JavaScript. So if I come down, I can even steal it from here, go to the patient index, grab this script section if I want, go to the doctor index, add that script section right here so that it will style those tooltips. Now you notice it's not styling the one in the center. That's because that button's already being used for the pop-up modal. Okay, you can't have it both ways, not without doing extra work. And to me, it's not the end of the world. If I just hover over here, click to change page size, I know right away, okay, exactly what's going on. Okay, all right. That's the end of this lesson.